Per human single mom sheltered mysterious alien boy for one night, unaware he was the Emperor's son. The red dust never settled on Virion. Elara Martinez wiped the crimson grit from her goggles and squinted through the toxic haze that perpetually shrouded mining Sector 7. Her lungs burned with each breath, even through the basic filtration mask that barely kept the worst of the crystal vapors out. Around her, dozens of other humans bent over their extraction tools, their backs aching as they chipped away at the glowing veins of zilithium that the alien Dominion so desperately craved. "Mama, you're home!" 6-year-old Sarah's voice cut through the monotonous hum of the settlement's life support systems as Elara stumbled through the door of their cramped prefab shelter. The little girl's blonde hair was tied back with a strip of recycled fabric, her bright blue eyes the only spark of hope in this desolate place. Elara managed a tired smile and scooped her daughter into her arms, ignoring the sharp protest from her strained muscles. "Hey, baby girl. Did you finish your reading exercises?" "Yes, and I drew you this." Sarah held up a crude sketch on salvaged paper, stick figures of two humans holding hands under what might have been a yellow sun. On Earth, Elara remembered, the sun had been yellow. Here on Virion, it was a harsh white dwarf that offered little warmth. "It's beautiful, sweetheart." Elara's voice caught slightly. She set Sarah down and moved to their tiny food preparation area, where their daily ration packs sat waiting. The metallic taste of the processed protein never got easier to stomach, but it was better than starving. Through their single window, she could see the towering spires of the Dominion's administrative complex in the distance, gleaming silver against the perpetual rust-colored sky. The alien structures seemed to mock the ramshackle human quarters that sprawled around the mining operations like an infection. "Mrs. Martinez completed her quota again today," came a mechanical voice from the door's communication panel. Elara's blood chilled. The Overseer, one of the lower caste aliens assigned to monitor human productivity, never visited unless there was trouble. She pressed the door release, and the 7-foot-tall creature ducked through the entrance. Its elongated limbs moved with unsettling grace, and its large, black eyes regarded her with the same emotional investment one might show a piece of machinery. "Overseer Vex." Elara kept her voice steady, positioning herself protectively in front of Sarah. "The mines require additional shifts. You will report at dawn cycle for extended extraction." The alien's voice was a strange harmonic that made her teeth ache. "But that's 17 hours. I have a child." "Irrelevant. The Dominion's needs supersede human breeding concerns." Vex's head tilted in what might have been curiosity. "Your offspring can be relocated to communal care if productivity is compromised." Elara's hands clenched into fists, but she forced them to relax. Any sign of aggression would mean immediate punishment, or worse. "I'll manage both, Overseer." "Acceptable." The creature turned to leave, then paused. "Recent intelligence suggests rebel activity in the outer territories. Report any unusual observations immediately. The Empire rewards useful information." After Vex departed, Elara sank onto their threadbare couch and pulled Sarah close. The little girl had remained silent during the exchange, but Elara could feel her small body trembling. "Are they going to take me away, Mama?" "No, baby. I won't let that happen." The promise felt hollow, but it was all she had. Hours later, as the twin moons cast their eerie glow through the window, Elara lay awake listening to Sarah's peaceful breathing. The child's trust was absolute, and it terrified her. What happened when promises weren't enough? The storm hit without warning. Virion's weather was as hostile as its rulers, sudden atmospheric disturbances that could strip the flesh from bone if you were caught outside without shelter. The wind howled like a living thing, and their shelter groaned under the assault. Emergency lights flickered as the settlement's power grid struggled to compensate. Through the chaos, Elara heard something that didn't belong, a sound too organic for the storm's mechanical fury. "Stay here, Sarah." She grabbed her maintenance jacket and the small flashlight they were permitted for emergencies. "Mama, no! It's too dangerous. I'll be right back. Lock the door behind me." The storm tried to tear her apart the moment she stepped outside. Sand and debris whipped around her like angry wasps, and she had to fight for every step toward the old ruins at the settlement's edge. The sound came again, definitely not the wind. The ruins were remnants of some ancient civilization, predating even the Dominion's arrival on Virion. The humans weren't allowed to explore them, but desperation made people do foolish things. Her flashlight beam cut through the swirling dust and revealed a small form huddled beneath a collapsed stone archway. At first, she thought it was an injured animal, but as she moved closer, her heart stopped. It was a child. An alien child. The boy couldn't be more than 8 or 9 years old, with the characteristic silver-blue skin and elongated features of the Dominion species, but something was wrong. His clothes, what remained of them, were made of fine fabric that seemed to shimmer even in her weak flashlight beam. More concerning were the dark stains that might have been blood. "Please," he whispered in accented English, his large eyes wide with terror. "Don't call them. Please!" Every instinct screamed at her to walk away. Helping aliens without permission was punishable by death. But this wasn't an overseer or administrator. This was a child, alone and afraid in a storm that could kill him. "Are you hurt?" she asked softly. He nodded, clutching what looked like a deep gash in his side. "Bad people. They killed my guards. I ran." Guards? What kind of alien child had guards? The storm intensified, and a piece of debris crashed down where they'd been standing moments before. Decision made, Elara scooped the boy into her arms, surprised by how light he felt. "Hold tight. We're going to run." The journey back to her shelter felt like a lifetime. The boy, who told her his name was Kale, stayed conscious but grew weaker with each step. When they finally burst through her door, Sarah's scream of surprise was quickly replaced by concern. "Mama, he's hurt!" "I know, baby. Help me get the medical supplies." Their first aid kit was basic, designed for mining accidents, not whatever had happened to this boy. But Elara had learned to make do with less. As she cleaned and bandaged his wounds, her mind raced with the implications of what she'd done. Harboring an alien child was treason. If they were discovered, both she and Sarah would face execution. But looking at Kale's peaceful face as he finally fell asleep on their couch, she couldn't bring herself to regret the choice. "Is he going to be okay?" Sarah whispered. "I think so. But we need to be very careful. No one can know he's here." As the storm gradually subsided outside, Elara watched over the sleeping boy and wondered what she'd gotten herself into. Something about him nagged at her. The fine clothes, the mention of guards, the way he spoke with an authority that seemed far beyond his years. Who was Kale, really? And what would happen when the Dominion realized he was missing? The first pale light of Virion's harsh sun was beginning to filter through the dust clouds when Elara finally allowed herself to close her eyes. She didn't know it yet, but her simple act of compassion had just set in motion events that would reshape the galaxy. In her arms, Sarah slept soundly. On the couch, a wounded alien prince dreamed of fire and betrayal. And in the distance, ships were already beginning their search. Elara woke to the sound of Sarah's giggling, a sound that had become rare in their harsh world. Sunlight streamed through their small window, and she realized with a start that she'd slept past the dawn shift call. Her body ached from the previous night's storm rescue, but panic shot through her as she remembered what waited on their couch. Kale was awake, sitting cross-legged while Sarah showed him her collection of smooth stones she'd gathered from the mining tunnels. His silver-blue skin looked healthier in the daylight, and the terror from last night had been replaced by quiet curiosity. "Mama! Kale knows how to make the rocks sing!" Sarah held up one of her stones, which was now glowing with a faint inner light. "Sarah, put that down." Elara's voice was sharper than intended. Any unexplained phenomenon could draw unwanted attention from the overseers. Kale quickly touched the stone, and its glow faded. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to." "It's okay." Elara softened her tone, seeing the fear return to his large, dark eyes. "We just have to be careful about unusual things." She knelt beside the couch, studying the boy in daylight. His features were definitely Dominion, the elongated limbs, the slightly larger skull, the skin that seemed to shimmer with an inner luminescence. But there was something else, something she couldn't quite place. His bone structure seemed more refined than the working-class aliens she encountered in the mines. Kale, who were your guards? Why were bad people chasing you? The boy's expression closed off immediately. I can't say. They'll find me if I tell anyone. But if you're in danger, maybe I can help. No! His voice carried an unexpected authority that made both Alara and Sarah jump. You don't understand. These people, they have ships, weapons, resources. If they find me here, they'll kill everyone in this settlement just to make sure I'm dead. A chill ran down Alara's spine. What kind of child spoke about mass murder with such certainty? Then maybe I should take you to the authorities. The overseers could protect you. Kale's laugh was bitter and far too old for his apparent age. The authorities are who I'm running from. Some of them, anyway. I don't know who to trust anymore. Alara felt the weight of the situation settling on her shoulders like a physical burden. If she turned him in, he might be killed. If she kept him, they might all be killed. There was no good choice. Mama, Sarah said quietly. He's scared like I get scared sometimes. When the overseers come. Looking at her daughter's earnest face, then at Kale's carefully controlled fear, Alara made her decision. Okay. You can stay. But only for a day or two, until you're strong enough to go wherever you need to go. Relief flooded Kale's features. Thank you. I promise I won't bring trouble. The sharp wail of settlement alarms cut off his words. All three of them froze as the mechanical voice of the communication system crackled to life. All human residents report to designated assembly areas immediately. Compliance is mandatory. This is not a drill. Alara's blood turned to ice. Emergency assemblies only happened during security sweeps or when someone had committed a serious crime against the Dominion. Under the couch. Now. She helped Kale squeeze into the narrow space beneath their furniture, then arranged the threadbare cushions to hide any trace of him. Don't make a sound. No matter what happens. Mama, I'm scared, Sarah whispered. I know, baby. Just do exactly what they say, okay? And don't look at the couch. They joined the stream of humans filing out of their shelters, all wearing the same expression of barely controlled terror. The settlement's central courtyard was surrounded by alien soldiers Alara had never seen before, not the usual overseers, but elite troops in dark armor that seemed to absorb light. A tall figure stepped forward, its movements predatory and precise. Unlike the other aliens, this one wore insignia that marked it as high-ranking military. When it spoke, its voice carried the harmonic undertones of the upper castes. Humans of Sector 7. We seek a fugitive who may have sought shelter in your pathetic settlement. A young Dominion citizen, injured, possibly delirious. Anyone providing aid to this individual is guilty of treason against the Empire. Alara forced herself to breathe normally as the soldier's gaze swept over the crowd. Beside her, Sarah pressed closer, her small hand gripping Alara's with desperate strength. We will conduct individual interviews. Anyone found to be concealing information will be executed, along with their family units. This is not a negotiation. The questioning took hours. One by one, families were called forward and interrogated by the elite soldiers. Alara watched as Mrs. Chin, an elderly woman from the next block, was questioned about unusual sounds during the storm. When the soldier wasn't satisfied with her answers, it pressed something to her throat that made her scream. Finally, it was their turn. Alara Martinez and offspring Sarah Martinez, the lead soldier read from a data pad. You work extended shifts in the crystal mines. Your loyalty record shows minor infractions but no serious violations. Yes, sir. Alara kept her voice steady. During last night's storm, did you observe any unusual activity? Sounds that didn't belong to the weather patterns? No, sir. We stayed inside our shelter as required during emergency conditions. The soldier leaned closer, its black eyes reflecting her image like dark mirrors. You were seen outside your shelter during the storm. Explain. Alara's heart hammered, but she forced her expression to remain neutral. Our waste recycler was damaged by debris. I went out to activate the emergency seal to prevent contamination of our living space. It was a plausible lie. Waste system failures were common during storms, and the Dominion was obsessive about sanitation protocols. The soldier stared at her for what felt like an eternity, then turned to Sarah. Small human. Did your maternal unit leave the shelter last night? She fixed the smelly machine that was broken, Sarah said in a tiny voice. Did you see anything else? Any other person or creature? No, sir. Just Mama. The soldier's attention returned to Alara. If you are concealing the fugitive, we will discover this deception. The consequences will be educational. I understand, sir. We've seen nothing unusual. After an eternity, the soldier dismissed them with a wave of its elongated hand. Alara managed to walk normally back to their shelter, but her legs felt like water. Inside, she found Cale exactly where she'd left him, his eyes wide with fear as he emerged from his hiding spot. They're looking for you specifically, she whispered. High-ranking military, not just local overseers. Who are you? Cale was quiet for a long moment, then spoke in rapid, flowing syllables that sounded like music. The language was beautiful and complex, unlike anything Alara had heard from the working-class aliens. I'm sorry, he said, switching back to English. When I'm frightened, I revert to the old tongue. The old tongue? It's what educated families speak. At home. He looked away. My father insisted I learn it properly. Something about the way he said, properly, made Alara's skin crawl. It was the tone of someone accustomed to being obeyed, to having their words treated as commands rather than requests. But he was just a child. A scared, wounded child who had nowhere else to go. It's okay, she said gently. You're safe here. For now. Outside, she could hear the soldiers beginning their systematic search of the settlement, moving from shelter to shelter. It would be hours before they reached this section, but eventually they would come. And when they did, Alara would have to make a choice that could destroy everything she loved. The search teams had moved on to the outer sectors by evening, but Alara couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. She'd sent Sarah to play quietly in their small back room while she prepared their meager dinner, but every shadow outside their window seemed to hide threats. Cale sat at their tiny table, absently arranging Sarah's stones in complex geometric patterns. His movements were precise, almost ritualistic, and Alara noticed he kept glancing toward the settlement's main entrance with an expression she was beginning to recognize as calculating rather than fearful. Maria should have checked in by now, Alara muttered, looking out at her neighbor's dark shelter. Maria Santos had been her closest friend since they'd arrived on Virion 5 years ago, a fellow single mother who helped watch Sarah when Alara worked the dangerous double shifts. A sharp crack echoed across the settlement, followed by another. Alara froze. Those weren't the usual sounds of the evening shift change. Mama? Sarah appeared in the doorway, clutching her worn stuffed animal. It's okay, baby. Just... The night sky suddenly blazed orange. Fire erupted from the settlement's eastern quarter, and screams pierced the air. But these weren't human screams, they were the harmonic death wails of dying aliens. No, 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 Cale whispered, his silver skin paling to an almost gray shade. They found me. They actually found me. Who found you? Alara grabbed his shoulders. What's happening? Before he could answer, the door to Maria's shelter exploded outward in a shower of sparks and debris. Dark figures poured out, dragging Maria behind them. Even at this distance, Alara could see the blood streaming down her friend's face. Find the heir. A voice roared in the alien tongue, but somehow Alara understood it. Burn every structure until we find him. Heir? More explosions shook the settlement as the attackers, definitely not Dominion soldiers, systematically destroyed shelter after shelter. These aliens moved with military precision, but their armor was mismatched, scavenged. Mercenaries or rebels, not official forces. Cale. Alara's voice was deadly quiet. What did you just say about an heir? The boy's large eyes were filled with terror, but also something else. Guilt. I never meant for this to happen. They weren't supposed to track me here. Mama! Sarah screamed as a blast of energy punched through their front wall, showering them with hot metal fragments. Elara scooped up her daughter and grabbed Cale's hand. Move! Now! She led them to the back of their shelter, where a loose panel had concealed her secret, a maintenance tunnel she'd discovered during her first year on Virion. It connected to the old mining shafts that honeycombed the ground beneath the settlement. How did you know about this? Cale asked as they crawled through the narrow opening. I was a curious kid once. Before. She gestured vaguely at their burning world above. The tunnels were pitch black and filled with the acrid smell of processed minerals. Elara used her emergency light sparingly, knowing its battery wouldn't last long. Behind them, the sounds of destruction grew louder. This way, she whispered, guiding them through passages she hadn't explored in years. Her childhood memories were hazy, but she remembered these tunnels eventually led to the old processing facility outside the settlement. Wait, Cale said suddenly. Not that tunnel. How do you? That passage floods during the night cycle. The mineral runoff creates a toxic slurry that can dissolve organic matter in minutes. His voice was matter-of-fact, as if discussing the weather. Elara stared at him in the dim light. How could you possibly know that? I just do. She wanted to press him, but another explosion shook dust from the tunnel ceiling, reminding her of more immediate concerns. They took the alternate route Cale suggested, and sure enough, she could hear the distant sound of rushing liquid from the passage they'd avoided. Mama, I'm scared, Sarah whispered. I know, baby. We're almost. A scream echoed through the tunnels behind them, human, female, and heartbreakingly familiar. Maria. We have to help her. Elara started to turn back. No. Cale's hand shot out with surprising strength, gripping her wrist. It's too late. If we go back now, everyone dies. That's my friend. And she's already dead, Cale said with a coldness that made Elara's blood freeze. The Crimson Brotherhood doesn't take prisoners when they're hunting royal blood. The words hung in the air like a physical weight. Royal blood. Brotherhood. Terms that suggested knowledge far beyond what any normal alien child should possess. Who are you? Elara demanded. Before Cale could answer, they heard Maria's voice one last time, weak but carrying through the underground passages. Protect the children, please, protect them. Then silence. Sarah began to cry quietly, and Elara pulled her daughter closer, her own eyes burning with unshed tears. Maria had been like a sister to her, the only family they'd had on this hostile world. I'm sorry, Cale whispered, and for the first time, he sounded genuinely like a child. This is all my fault. I should have kept running. I should never have let you help me. They continued in heavy silence until they reached an intersection where several tunnels converged. Here, Cale stopped and pulled something from his torn clothing, a small device that projected a holographic map of the entire underground system. The processing facility is 2 kilometers northwest, he said, studying the display with practiced ease. From there, we can access the maintenance roads that lead to the Scarlands. Elara stared at the advanced technology in his small hands. Where did you get that? It's standard equipment for. He caught himself, shutting off the device. We should keep moving. For what, Cale? Standard equipment for what? For people like me. The answer was no answer at all, but the sound of pursuit in the tunnels behind them cut off further questioning. They ran through the darkness, guided by Cale's impossible knowledge of terrain he'd never seen before. As they climbed out of the tunnel system near the abandoned processing facility, Elara looked back at the settlement she'd called home. Half of it was burning, alien figures moving through the smoke like demons. The other half was too quiet, suggesting its inhabitants were either dead or captured. Royal blood, she said quietly as they caught their breath. That's what they called you. Cale met her eyes for the first time since the attack began. In them, she saw ancient sadness and a terrible understanding of the forces that shaped their universe. Yes, he said simply. And you're not just any royal, are you? He looked away, toward the scarlands that stretched endlessly before them, a wasteland of twisted metal and poisoned earth where even the Dominion feared to tread. No, he whispered. I'm not. In the distance, Maria's shelter collapsed in a shower of sparks, taking with it the last remnant of the life Elara had tried to build for her daughter. Now they were truly alone, fleeing into the wilderness with a boy who might be the most dangerous person on the planet. The scarlands stretched before them like the surface of a dead planet, twisted metal spires jutting from poisoned earth, the skeletal remains of ancient battles scattered across the horizon. The air itself seemed wrong, shimmering with toxic heat that made breathing feel like swallowing glass. Elara adjusted Sarah's makeshift backpack, fashioned from strips of their torn clothing. Her daughter had been unusually quiet since they'd entered the wasteland 3 hours ago, her small hand gripping Elara's with desperate intensity. How much further? Sarah asked, her voice hoarse from the acrid air. I don't know, baby. Elara looked to Cale, who was studying another of his impossible maps, this one drawn on what appeared to be living metal that shifted and changed as he watched it. The next safe zone is approximately 6 kilometers northeast, Cale said without looking up. There's a shelter complex built into the remains of an old fortress. We can rest there until the heat cycle passes. Heat cycle? Elara had never heard the term. During midday, the ground temperature rises to levels that can cause spontaneous combustion of organic matter. The radiation from the old battlefields becomes particularly dangerous. He folded the map with practiced ease. Most travelers shelter during the peak hours. Most travelers? Elara stopped walking. Cale, how do you know so much about a place no one is supposed to go? The boy's silver skin flushed a darker shade. I studied maps. Before. When I lived in the city. It was a weak excuse, and they all knew it. But before Elara could press him further, a low growl echoed from somewhere behind a cluster of twisted metal trees. Screamers, Cale whispered, his eyes wide with genuine fear. We need to move. Now. They ran across the broken landscape, leaping over chasms that glowed with residual energy from weapons fired decades ago. Behind them, the growling multiplied. Whatever a screamer was, there was more than one. Cale led them through the maze of debris with unnerving confidence, taking turns that seemed random but somehow always led away from the sounds of pursuit. When they finally stopped to catch their breath in the shadow of a massive, half-melted tank, Elara realized something that chilled her to the bone. The boy wasn't reading his maps anymore. He was navigating from memory. Cale, she said quietly, have you been here before? No. The answer came too quickly. Then how did you know about the screamers? How did you know which path to take? I'm good at reading terrain. Sarah pulled on Elara's sleeve. Mama, I'm thirsty. They shared their last water ration, a few sips each from the recycled container Elara had grabbed during their escape. As Sarah drank, she watched Cale with an expression that was becoming increasingly familiar, suspicion mixed with something that looked almost like jealousy. He gets to know everything, and I don't get to know anything, Sarah whispered when Cale moved ahead to scout their path. What do you mean, sweetheart? You asked him questions, and you listen to his answers like they're important. But when I ask questions, you tell me to be quiet and follow orders. Elara felt a pang of guilt. Her daughter was right. Since finding Cale, she had been treating the alien boy as a resource, someone who might help them survive, while expecting Sarah to simply endure without understanding. I'm sorry, baby. This is all very complicated, and I'm trying to keep us safe. But why does he know so much? He's just a kid like me, but he talks like the overseers sometimes. Before Elara could respond, Cale returned with news that made her forget the conversation entirely. There's a patrol ahead. 3 hover bikes, Dominion military markings. They're searching the ruins systematically. The same ones from the settlement? No. These are different. Elite Guard by the look of their armor configurations. Again, knowledge he shouldn't possess. Elara was beginning to compile a mental list of impossible things Cale knew, and it was getting uncomfortably long. They took a longer route around the patrol, crawling through the wreckage of what might once have been a beautiful city. As they moved, Cale began talking, whether from nervousness or a need to fill the oppressive silence, Elara couldn't tell. The old records say this was the site of the Battle of Virion Prime, he said, running his hand along a piece of twisted architecture. When the Dominion first arrived, the indigenous population fought for 7 years. This city held out the longest, almost to the end. How do you know about old records? Sarah asked, echoing Elara's thoughts. We had tutors. In the palace. They taught us history. What palace? The question slipped out before Elara could stop it. Cale froze, realizing what he'd said. I meant, in the city. The administrative complex has tutors for the children of officials. Another lie, and not a particularly good one. Elara had never heard of tutors being provided to anyone but the highest-ranking Dominion families. Tell me about it, she said carefully. This palace where you learned history. It's not really a palace. More like a big building with lots of rooms. Cale's voice became dreamy, lost in memory. There's a garden in the central courtyard with water that falls from the ceiling in patterns that look like stars. And the library has books written on crystal tablets that glow when you read them. The throne room has walls made of living stone that change color based on the mood of whoever sits on. He stopped abruptly, his face going pale. The throne room? Elara's voice was barely a whisper. I meant the meeting room. Where the administrators gather. With a throne? Not a throne. Just a big chair. Sarah was staring between them with wide eyes, sensing the tension even if she didn't understand its source. Elara knelt in front of Cale, taking his shoulders gently but firmly. Cale, I need you to tell me the truth. Not some story about administrators or tutors or big chairs. The truth. Who are you? The boy looked at her with eyes that suddenly seemed far too old for his face. In them, she saw the weight of secrets too large for a child to carry. I can't, he whispered. If I tell you, they'll never stop hunting us. Never. They're already hunting us. Not like this. Right now, they think I'm just a runaway noble's son. Someone important enough to search for, but not. He swallowed hard. Not worth burning down entire sectors to find. A chill ran through Elara as she understood the implication. Whatever Cale's true identity, revealing it would escalate the search to levels that would make their current danger seem trivial. Then we keep running, she said simply. As they prepared to leave their temporary shelter, Sarah tugged on Elara's hand one more time. Mama, are we ever going home? Elara looked back at the distant smoke still rising from their settlement, then at the endless wasteland ahead, then at the alien boy who carried secrets that could apparently reshape their world. I don't know, sweetheart, she said honestly. I don't know if we even have a home anymore. But as they walked deeper into the Scarlands, following Cale's impossible knowledge toward an uncertain future, Elara began to wonder if home was something they would have to build for themselves, wherever this journey finally led them. In the distance, the spires of an ancient fortress rose from the poisoned earth, promising shelter and perhaps some answers to the questions that were multiplying with every step. The fortress looked like a monument to futility, massive stone walls scarred by energy weapons, towers that had been snapped off like broken teeth. But it was shelter, and after 2 days crossing the Scarlands, shelter was worth more than gold. The entry tunnel should be on the eastern face, Cale said, consulting his metal map again. It was designed to withstand siege warfare, so the main entrance will be heavily fortified. Elara no longer bothered asking how he knew such things. The list of impossible knowledge had grown so long that questioning each item felt pointless. Instead, she focused on keeping Sarah moving as they circled the ancient structure. The entrance was exactly where Cale had predicted, a narrow tunnel that burrowed deep into the fortress's foundation before opening into a vast underground complex. Emergency lighting flickered weakly along the walls, suggesting the power systems were still partially functional after all these years. It's like an underground city, Sarah breathed, her voice echoing in the cavernous space. She was right. The fortress wasn't just a military structure, it was a self-contained habitat with living quarters, storage areas, and what appeared to be a complete life support system. The architecture was strange, either fully human nor fully alien, suggesting it had been built during the early years of contact between the species. The refugee quarters should be this way, Cale said, leading them through corridors lined with abandoned equipment. Refugee quarters? Elara caught his arm. Cale, what is this place? It was a neutral zone. During the integration wars, when humans and Dominion forces were learning to coexist. He wouldn't meet her eyes. Families from both species took shelter here when the fighting got too intense. And you know this how? Historical records. I told you I had tutors. Stop. Elara's voice was sharp enough to make both children jump. Just stop with the lies. No tutor teaches that level of detail about military installations. No child remembers architectural specifications and energy weapon scarring patterns from history lessons. Cale's silver skin had gone almost gray, but he remained silent. They found quarters that were relatively intact, a suite of rooms that might once have housed a small family. While Sarah explored the empty chambers with the boundless curiosity of childhood, Elara gathered supplies from the emergency stores. The food was stale but edible, and there was enough clean water to last several days. As evening fell, they settled around a small heating unit Cale had somehow activated without consulting any manual or control panel. Sarah had finally fallen asleep, curled up in a corner with her stuffed animal, leaving the two adults alone with the weight of unspoken truths. Elara watched Cale in the dim light, noting details she'd been too busy to observe before. His posture was unnaturally straight, even when relaxed. His speech patterns, despite his youth, carried the cadence of someone accustomed to being listened to. And his hands, she'd noticed this earlier but dismissed it, his hands were soft, unmarked by labor of any kind. You've never worked a day in your life, have you? She said quietly. Cale looked up from the small device he'd been adjusting. What? Your hands. No calluses, no scars, no stains from processing chemicals or mineral dust. Even the children of Dominion officials have some marks from basic labor assignments. But you. She studied his face. You've never done manual work of any kind. I was protected. My family kept me from dangerous tasks. What family? The question came out harder than she'd intended. Cale's device suddenly flared with light, and in that brief illumination, Elara saw something that made her heart stop. Floating above the device was a holographic symbol, an intricate design that seemed to incorporate stars, geometric patterns, and what looked like a crown. The Imperial Seal. Cale quickly shut off the device, but it was too late. The image was burned into Elara's memory. What was that? She whispered. Nothing. Just a navigation marker. That was the Imperial Seal. I've seen it on official broadcasts on the currency on. She stood up slowly, pieces falling into place with terrifying clarity. On the robes of the royal family. Elara, please. You're not just nobility, are you? You're not even just high nobility. Her voice was getting louder, and she fought to keep from waking Sarah. That device, those maps, the way you know things. Who are you? Cale's composure finally cracked. Tears began flowing down his silver cheeks, tears that seemed to glow faintly in the dim light. I can't tell you, he sobbed. If I tell you the truth, they'll never stop hunting us. The Crimson Brotherhood, the Void Syndicate, even factions within the Dominion itself. They'll hunt us across galaxies if they have to. The truth about what? About who I am. About what I represent. His small body shook with the force of his crying. I didn't ask for any of this. I just wanted to be a normal child, to have friends, to play games instead of attending state functions and learning about planetary management, and... He stopped, realizing what he'd revealed. State functions. Elara repeated slowly. Planetary management. Cale wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. They killed my guards, Elara. My personal guards, soldiers who'd sworn to die before letting harm come to me. And they died. They died because someone in the palace, someone I trusted, told the assassins exactly where to find me. Who would want to kill you? Everyone. The word came out as a whisper full of exhaustion. There are factions that think I'm too young, too inexperienced. Others who believe the bloodline should pass to my cousin's family. And some who want to end the monarchy entirely and establish a military council. Monarchy. The word hung in the air like a physical presence. Before Alara could process the full implications, an explosion rocked the fortress. Emergency lights flashed red, and an automated voice began speaking in the Old Dominion dialect. Warning. Perimeter breach detected. Multiple hostiles approaching main complex. Initiating lockdown protocols. No. Kale was frantically working with his device. They found us. They actually tracked us here. Who found us? The Brotherhood. They must have followed our heat signatures through the Scarlands. He looked at her with eyes full of terror. Alara, they don't take prisoners. They believe the only way to ensure a clean succession is to eliminate all possible heirs. Another explosion, closer this time. Sarah woke with a scream, and Alara gathered her daughter into her arms. All possible heirs? She repeated slowly, understanding flooding through her. Kale, what exactly are you heir to? He met her eyes, and in them she saw the weight of an entire civilization. Everything. He whispered. I'm heir to everything. The fortress shuddered under another assault, and somewhere in the distance, she could hear voices shouting orders in languages she didn't recognize. Multiple factions, all hunting the same target. All hunting the boys she'd decided to protect. As the siege began in earnest, Alara realized that her simple act of kindness had placed them at the center of what might be a galactic civil war. And somewhere in the darkness beyond the fortress walls, armies were gathering to decide the fate of an empire. The fortress walls groaned under another barrage of energy weapons. Ancient stone cracked and crumbled as the Crimson Brotherhood's assault intensified, their war cries echoing through the corridors like the screams of the damned. The main gate won't hold much longer, Kale said, his face pale as he monitored the fortress's defensive systems through his device. Maybe 10 minutes before they break through. Alara clutched Sarah closer, feeling her daughter's small body trembling against her. They were trapped. The emergency exits had been sealed by the lockdown protocols, and the only way out led directly through the attacking forces. There. Kale pointed to a section of the wall where emergency lights indicated a possible escape route. The old maintenance shafts connect to the outer defensive ring. We might be able to. The wall exploded inward. Masked figures poured through the breach, their weapons crackling with deadly energy. The Brotherhood had found them at last. There! One of the assassins pointed directly at Kale. The Pretender Prince! Kill him quickly before. His words ended in a gurgle as something silver flashed through his throat. More figures poured through the breach, but these weren't Brotherhood assassins. These were soldiers in gleaming white armor, moving with the precision of elite military units. They engaged the assassins with ruthless efficiency, their advanced weapons cutting through the Brotherhood forces like harvesting tools through grain. Defensive positions! The lead soldier's voice carried absolute authority. Protect the primary objective at all costs. Within minutes, the Brotherhood assault had been completely repelled. Bodies lay scattered across the chamber, but none belonged to the mysterious rescuers. As the last of the assassins fell, an eerie silence settled over the fortress. The lead soldier approached them slowly, his helmet reflecting the emergency lighting. Behind him, the other soldiers formed a protective circle, their weapons still raised and ready. Then, something extraordinary happened. As one, every soldier dropped to one knee and bowed their heads. Your Radiance, the lead soldier said, his voice filled with reverence. By the grace of the twin suns you live. Alara felt the world tilt around her. Your Radiance. The formal address reserved for only one person in the entire Dominion. The Emperor. General Veyron? Kale's voice was small and uncertain. The lead soldier removed his helmet, revealing a face that was immediately recognizable to anyone who had ever seen official Dominion broadcasts. General Veyron, the Emperor's shield, commander of the Imperial Guard, second most powerful person in the galaxy. His silver skin was marked with ritual scars that indicated countless victories, and his eyes held the hard gleam of someone who had shaped the fate of worlds. When he looked at Kale, those eyes softened with something that might have been relief. "My young Emperor," Varen said, "we have searched every world in the Outer Rim for you. When the palace was attacked, when we found the bodies of your guards..." He paused, his voice thick with emotion. "We thought you were dead." "My father?" Kale's voice was barely a whisper. "Emperor Thrain died protecting the evacuation routes. His last command was to find you and ensure your safety." Varen's expression hardened. "The assassination was coordinated from within the palace itself. We still don't know how deep the conspiracy reaches." "Emperor." The word echoed in Alara's mind like a tolling bell. She had been sheltering the Emperor of the Dominion, the ruler of 1,000 worlds, the most powerful being in known space. She looked at Kale, really looked at him for the first time since that night in the storm. The way he held himself despite his youth, the unconscious authority in his voice, the impossible knowledge he carried. It all made perfect sense. "Your Radiance," Varen continued, "we must return you to the capital immediately. The succession must be confirmed before the other factions can consolidate power." "Wait." Kale stepped forward, and despite his small stature, his presence suddenly seemed to fill the entire chamber. "What about Alara and Sarah? They saved my life. They protected me when no one else would." For the first time, Varen's gaze shifted to the two humans. His expression went cold, calculating. "The human females present a security risk, Your Radiance. They have seen too much, know too much about your survival and current location. They're under my protection," Kale said firmly. "With respect, Your Radiance, you are not yet crowned. Until the succession ceremonies are complete, security decisions fall to the Imperial Guard." Varen gestured to his soldiers. "Take them into custody." "No." The word cracked like a whip. Despite his youth, when Kale spoke with authority, even General Varen paused. "I am the heir to the Radiant Throne. My father is dead, which makes me the rightful emperor whether crowned or not. And I forbid you to harm them." The silence stretched between them like a taut wire. Alara could see the conflict playing out in Varen's expression, loyalty to his young emperor warring against decades of military pragmatism. "Your Radiance," Varen said carefully, "humans cannot be trusted with Imperial secrets. It is nothing personal, but their loyalty is unreliable. For the security of the Empire." "Alara Martinez fed me when I was hungry," Kale interrupted. "She sheltered me when assassins were hunting me. She risked her life and her daughter's life to protect me, knowing that discovery meant death." His voice carried power that seemed impossible from someone so young. "If you cannot trust someone who has already proven their loyalty through sacrifice, then who can you trust, General?" Varen's jaw tightened. "Your father would have." "My father is dead." The words hit like physical blows. "Killed by people he trusted, in the place where he should have been safest. Maybe it's time to try trusting different people. Your Radiance, please be reasonable." "I am being reasonable. I'm being more reasonable than you are." Kale moved to stand between Varen and Alara. "These humans are now under Imperial protection. Anyone who harms them answers to me personally." The young Emperor and the old general stared at each other across a chasm of philosophies and generations. Around them, the Imperial Guards waited with weapons ready, uncertain which authority they should follow. Finally, Varen spoke. "Very well, Your Radiance. But they will need to be debriefed and sworn to secrecy. The penalty for breaking Imperial confidentiality is death for them and their entire bloodline." "Agreed," Kale said. "But they come with us to the capital. That is highly irregular. So is finding the Emperor's heir hiding in a mining settlement. We'll adjust." As the soldiers began preparations to depart, Alara finally found her voice. "Kale. Your Radiance. I don't understand. I'm really the person whose decisions will shape the fate of billions," he said quietly. And I'm still the scared kid you found hiding in a storm. He looked at her with ancient eyes and a young face. Thank you, Elara, for treating me like a child instead of an emperor. I'd forgotten what that felt like. As they prepared to leave the fortress, Sarah tugged on Elara's hand. Mama, does this mean Kale is important? Elara looked at the boy who had turned out to be the most powerful person in the galaxy, surrounded by elite soldiers who would die at his command. Yes, sweetheart, she said softly. He's very important. But as General Varen's cold eyes found hers across the chamber, she realized that their troubles were far from over. Being under the protection of an emperor was one thing. Being trusted by his generals was something else entirely. The Imperial transport ship gleamed like a silver needle against Virion's rust-colored sky as they prepared for departure. Elara had never seen anything so beautiful, or so terrifying. Every surface seemed to pulse with barely contained energy, and the soldiers moving around it carried themselves with the confidence of beings who commanded the stars themselves. The journey to the capital will take 18 hours, General Varen informed them as they boarded. Your Radiance should rest. The coronation ceremonies will be extensive. But Kale wasn't listening. He stood at the transport's viewing port, staring down at the Scarlands where they'd barely escaped death. His small hands were clenched into fists, and his silver skin had taken on a luminescent quality that Elara had never seen before. Your Radiance? Varen approached cautiously. How many died in the mining settlement? Kale's voice was quiet, but it carried through the entire cabin. The casualty reports indicate. How many, General? Varen's jaw tightened. 73 humans confirmed dead. Unknown number of wounded. 73 people died because I sought shelter there. Kale turned from the viewport, and Elara was startled to see tears streaming down his face. But his expression wasn't one of childish grief, it was the controlled anguish of a ruler contemplating the cost of power. 73 people who had nothing to do with imperial politics. Your Radiance, the responsibility lies with the assassins, not. The responsibility lies with me. Kale's voice cut through the general's protests like a blade. I am the Emperor now, whether crowned or not. Every death in my name is my responsibility. Every life lost protecting me is a debt I owe. Varen looked uncomfortable with this display of conscience. Your father understood that leadership requires difficult choices. My father is dead, General. Killed by people he trusted absolutely. Kale moved toward the center of the cabin, and despite his youth, every person present seemed to gravitate toward him. Maybe absolute trust was his mistake. Your Radiance, surely you don't question. The ship's alarm systems suddenly shrieked to life. Red lights bathed the cabin as the transport lurched violently to one side. Multiple contacts approaching fast. The pilot's voice crackled over the communications system. Unidentified vessels, military-grade weaponry. Through the viewports, Elara could see sleek black ships emerging from the Scarland's twisted landscape like predatory birds. Their hulls bore no insignia, but their intent was unmistakable as energy weapons began charging with ominous blue light. Void Syndicate. Varen snarled, grabbing his helmet. They must have been monitoring Brotherhood communications, waiting for us to reveal ourselves. How many ships? Kale demanded. At least 12 attack craft, plus what looks like a command vessel. The pilot's voice was strained with concentration. Your Radiance, we need to make an emergency landing. We can't outrun that many. The transport shuddered under the first wave of energy blasts. Through the viewports, Elara could see pieces of their hull peeling away into the atmosphere. Emergency landing protocols activated. The pilot announced. Brace for impact. The world became a blur of screaming metal and flashing lights. Sarah's terrified cries mixed with the groaning of overstressed hull plating as the transport plummeted toward the surface. Elara wrapped her arms around her daughter and closed her eyes, waiting for the end. The crash was surprisingly gentle, a tribute to the pilot's skill and the transport's advanced systems. But as smoke cleared and emergency lighting activated, Elara could see the black ships landing in a defensive perimeter around their wreckage. Defensive positions. Varen barked. protect the Emperor at all costs. The Imperial Guards moved with practiced efficiency, but Alara could see the odds. 12 ships meant at least 60 attackers against their 15 defenders. The math was not encouraging. They'll try to board rather than destroy the transport, Veyron explained as his soldiers took positions. They need to confirm the kill to collect their bounty. Bounty? Alara asked. The Void Syndicate is mercenary, Kael answered, his young face grim. Someone is paying them enormous sums to ensure I never reach the capital. The first wave of attackers hit the transport's hull like a metallic tide. Energy weapons carved through the walls as black armored figures poured through the breaches. The Imperial Guards fought with desperate courage, but they were outnumbered 4-1. Fall back to the inner compartments, Veyron ordered. Create a defensive line around his radiance. But as they retreated deeper into the transport, Alara realized the truth with crystalline clarity. There was no escape. No rescue coming. No miracle that would save them. Except, perhaps, for the one they made themselves. She grabbed an energy rifle from a fallen guard and checked its charge. Still functional. Alara, what are you doing? Kael stared at her in shock. Something I should have done years ago, she said grimly. Fighting back. You're human, you don't know how to use that weapon. I've been watching your soldiers for the past hour. Point, aim, squeeze. How complicated can it be? She moved toward the breach where Syndicate fighters were advancing, Sarah safely behind the defensive line. The first assassin through the gap found himself facing a desperate human mother with nothing left to lose. The energy blast took him center mass, and he dropped without a sound. Impossible, Veyron breathed. Humans don't have the reflexes for. The second and third attackers fell to Alara's surprisingly accurate fire. She moved with instinctive grace, using cover and angles that somehow seemed to predict where the enemy would appear. She's protecting us, one of the Imperial Guards said with wonder. A human is protecting the Emperor. More Syndicate fighters poured through the breaches, but now they faced not just Imperial Guards, but a human woman fighting with the fury of someone defending her family. And gradually, impossibly, the tide began to turn. When the last assassin fell, silence settled over the wreckage like a physical weight. Alara stood among the bodies, the energy rifle smoking in her hands, her clothes torn and bloody but her eyes blazing with triumph. General Veyron approached slowly, his expression completely transformed. In 30 years of military service, he said quietly, I have never seen courage like that. Human or otherwise. He knelt before Alara, and his soldiers followed suit. I was wrong, he said simply. About humans. About loyalty. About what makes someone worthy of trust. He looked up at Kael with new understanding. Your Radiance, perhaps the Empire has been wrong about many things. As rescue ships finally appeared on the horizon, summoned by their emergency beacon, Kael took Alara's hand. You saved us, he said simply. We saved each other, she replied. That's what families do. And in that moment, watching a human mother and an alien emperor standing together among the wreckage, General Veyron began to envision a very different kind of empire than the one he had served his entire life. One built on merit rather than species. One where courage mattered more than birthright. One where a single act of kindness could indeed change the fate of the galaxy. The Imperial Palace rose before them like a crystalline mountain, its spires reaching toward the stars with impossible grace. Alara had seen it in broadcasts and propaganda images, but nothing had prepared her for the reality. Living architecture that seemed to breathe with inner light, gardens that defied gravity, and halls vast enough to house entire cities. It's so big, Sarah whispered, pressing her face against the transport's viewport as they approached the landing platform. The central palace alone covers 40 square kilometers, Kael said absently, but his attention was focused on the crowds gathering below. I'd forgotten how many people lived here. Thousands of aliens filled the ceremonial plaza, nobles in flowing robes, military officers in dress uniforms, and citizens from across the Dominion who had traveled incredible distances to witness the return of their lost emperor. News of Kale's survival had spread across the galaxy with the speed of hyperspace communications, sparking celebrations on 1,000 worlds. But it was the small group of humans near the landing platform that made Alara's breath catch. She had never seen so many of her own kind in one place since leaving Earth. They stood together uncertainly, clearly unsure of their place in this alien ceremony but unable to stay away from this historic moment. "They came to see you," Kale observed, following her gaze. "Word has spread about what you did. About how a human protected the Emperor." General Varen, resplendent in his ceremonial armor, turned to address them as the transport settled onto the platform. "Your Radiance, the High Council awaits. The coronation ceremony has been prepared according to ancient protocols." "And my advisors?" Kale asked. "Present and accounted for, Your Radiance. Though the council was surprised by some of your appointments." Alara felt a flutter of nervous anticipation. During the journey to the capital, Kale had discussed his plans for reform, but she hadn't quite believed he was serious about including humans in his government. The ceremony itself was unlike anything from human experience. In the Great Hall of Radiance, a chamber so vast its ceiling disappeared into luminous mists, representatives from across the Dominion gathered to witness the crowning of their new emperor. The crown of stars was a creation of living crystal that seemed to contain actual starlight. When it was placed on Kale's head by the High Chancellor, the entire hall filled with harmonic resonance that made every surface glow with inner fire. "By the ancient laws and the will of the twin suns," the Chancellor intoned, "I present to you Kale Thrain, fourth of his name, Emperor of the Dominion, Sovereign of 1,000 worlds, Guardian of the Balance." The response from the assembled crowd was deafening, a sound that combined traditional ceremonial calls with genuine joy at their ruler's return. But Alara found herself watching Kale's face rather than the pageantry around them. He looked impossibly young to bear such enormous responsibility, but his expression held a determination that reminded her of the boy who had defied General Varen to protect her and Sarah. Power, she realized, didn't have to corrupt. Sometimes it could elevate. "Your Imperial Majesty," the Chancellor continued, "do you swear to rule with wisdom, to protect the innocent, and to preserve the prosperity of all citizens under your care?" "I do so swear," Kale replied, his young voice carrying clearly through the vast hall. "But I also swear to expand the meaning of citizenship itself." A murmur rippled through the crowd. This wasn't part of the traditional ceremony. "For too long, we have divided our empire into rulers and subjects, into superior and inferior species, into those who matter and those who serve." Kale's voice grew stronger as he spoke. "This ends today." He gestured toward Alara and Sarah, who stood with the human delegation in a place of honor near the throne. "Behold Alara Martinez and her daughter Sarah, citizens of this empire who risked everything to protect their emperor when his own subjects sought his death. Their courage and loyalty shame those who would claim species determines worth." The hall fell completely silent. In the history of the Dominion, no human had ever been honored in the presence of the full court. "Therefore," Kale continued, "I hereby declare the establishment of the Human Advisory Council, with Alara Martinez as its first minister. She will have full authority to represent human interests in all matters of imperial policy." The silence stretched for what felt like eternity. Then, gradually, a few voices began calling out traditional acceptance phrases. Others joined them, and soon the hall filled with the sound of history changing. General Varen stepped forward, his ceremonial sword glinting in the crystal light. "Your Imperial Majesty, I pledge the loyalty of the Imperial Guard to these new policies. The humans have proven their worth in blood and courage." More voices joined the acceptance, until the sound became a roar of approval that shook the palace foundations. Later, in the private chambers that had been assigned to her and Sarah, quarters larger than their entire mining settlement, Alara stood at a window overlooking the capital city. The lights below stretched to the horizon, each one representing lives that would be affected by the changes Kale had announced. "It's beautiful," Sarah said, joining her at the window. "Are we really going to live here?" "For a while, I think. There's a lot of work to do." "Minister Martinez?" Kale appeared in the doorway, still wearing his ceremonial robes but looking every inch the child he remained beneath the crown. "Your Imperial Majesty," Elara said, offering a formal bow. "Stop that." His laugh was pure boyish mirth. "You're the only person in the galaxy who doesn't have to be formal with me. You earned that right when you decided to help a scared kid hiding in a storm." He moved to join them at the window, and for a moment they stood together in comfortable silence. A human woman, her daughter, and an alien emperor looking out at a universe that had just become a little bit larger for everyone. "Do you think it will work?" Elara asked quietly. "All these changes?" "I don't know," Kale admitted. "But I know that doing nothing would definitely fail. And I know that the best decisions I've made recently came from listening to someone who saw me as a person first and an emperor second." He took her hand in his, a gesture so natural that Sarah smiled and took his other hand, creating a small circle of connection. "Thank you," he said simply. "For everything. For being the mother I needed when I had nowhere else to turn." As Elara looked at this remarkable boy who had somehow become both her responsibility and her salvation, she realized that her single act of kindness in a storm had indeed changed the fate of an empire. But more than that, it had shown an entire galaxy that courage and compassion could transcend any boundary, even the vast spaces between the stars. In the distance, ships were already departing to carry news of the reforms to every corner of the Dominion. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new resistance from those who preferred the old ways. But tonight, a human mother and an alien emperor stood together as family, watching the dawn of a better world rise over the lights of the capital. And in that simple moment, the future began.